On the coast of Lebanon, overlooking the Mediterranean, stands a castle built almost 900 years ago. But the Crusaders who raised it were only the latest people to build upon this ground. Beneath its walls lie Roman streets, Persian fortifications, Phoenician temples, royal tombs, and the remains of a settlement founded thousands of years before recorded history. This is Byblos, known locally as Gebel, one of the oldest continuously inhabited cities in the world. Its story stretches across more than 8,000 years, not of written history, but of continuous settlement. Its earliest inhabitants left houses, tools, and burials. Writing appeared thousands of years later. To understand Byblos, we must return to a time before the Phoenicians, before the pharaohs, and before the city even had a name. More than 8,000 years ago, a small Neolithic community settled beside the sea. Its inhabitants were fishermen, farmers, and herders. They built simple houses, shaped tools from flint, and buried their dead close to where they lived. With fresh water, fertile land, access to the sea and mountains behind the coast, the settlement endured. Houses were rebuilt, paths became streets, and by the 3rd millennium BC, Byblos had become one of the eastern Mediterranean's most important ports. Its ancient inhabitants called it Gebal. The Greeks later called it Byblos, a name associated with the papyrus traded through the city. From the Greek words for papyrus and books eventually came biblia, the distant origin of the English word Bible. But long before Byblos became associated with books, it was famous for the timber of Lebanon. The mountains behind Byblos contained cedar and other timber that Egypt could not easily obtain at home. Much of it came from the city's mountainous hinterland, including the ancient cedar forests around Jaj. Logs were carried to the coast, loaded onto ships, and transported south for construction, shipbuilding, and royal projects. In return, Byblos received Egyptian gold, stone vessels, jewelry, ivory, papyrus, and other valuable objects. Over centuries, this relationship influenced the art, religion, and royal culture of Byblos. At the city's center stood the temple of Baalat Gebal, the Lady of Byblos. She was its protective goddess and became closely associated with the Egyptian goddess Hathor. At the nearby temple of the Obelisks, offerings combined local traditions with Egyptian symbols. Among them were hundreds of small ex voto statuettes, gifts left by worshippers in fulfillment of prayers or vows. Cast mainly in bronze, some were covered with delicate sheets of gold. Byblos remained an independent city ruled by its own kings, but few reigns reveal its connection with Egypt more clearly than that of King Abi Shemu. During the 19th century BC, Abi Shemu ruled Byblos at the height of its prosperity. Ships moved between his harbor and Egypt. Merchants crossed the city. Temples received valuable offerings, and the royal court displayed objects bearing the names of Egyptian pharaohs. Abi Shemu's own name was carved in Egyptian hieroglyphs on an obelisk dedicated in the sacred quarter. Byblos also used a separate local system of writing centuries before the Phoenician inscription on Ahiram's sarcophagus. Known as the Byblos script, it contained around 100 signs carved into stone, bronze, and other objects. It may have represented syllables, but remains undeciphered. It was not the later 22-letter Phoenician alphabet, and any connection between them is uncertain. Some of the strongest evidence for Abi Shemu's world was discovered underground. On the city's edge lay the royal necropolis, 9 deep shaft tombs cut into rock and clay. Kings were lowered into chambers far below the surface. Some were placed inside massive limestone sarcophagi, others in wooden coffins that have since decayed. Tomb 1 is associated with Abi Shemu. Among its treasures was a tall obsidian vessel with gold fittings, inscribed with the royal name of Pharaoh Amenemhat III. Beside it, Tomb 2 belonged to Abi Shemu's son, Abi. It contained a rectangular obsidian chest mounted on 4 small legs and decorated with gold. Its lid bore the royal name of Amenemhat IV. A passage linked Tomb 1 with the shaft of Tomb 2. Archaeologist Pierre Montet suggested that it may have been intended to preserve a connection between father and son, even after death. These kings ruled from the Lebanese coast, worshipped the Lady of Byblos, and controlled the movement of cedar, yet surrounded themselves with the names and symbols of Egypt. But Egypt's prestige and influence would not always shield the city.
Egypt has brought us wealth, but if its power fades, Byblos must stand on its own.
Nearly 5 centuries later, Byblos was ruled by King Rib-Hadda. Egypt still claimed authority over much of the region, but its control was weakening. Local rulers competed for territory, alliances changed, and enemies closed in around Byblos. Rib-Hadda repeatedly wrote to the Egyptian pharaoh, probably Akhenaten, asking him to send soldiers.
To the king, my lord. Byblos is in danger. Send archers quickly, or your loyal city will be lost.
His Akkadian cuneiform messages survived on clay tablets among the Amarna letters, preserving the fears of the royal court. In one letter, Rib-Hadda compared himself to a bird trapped in a cage. Again and again, he declared his loyalty and warned that the city could fall. The military help he needed never arrived in sufficient strength. Rib-Hadda was eventually driven from Byblos and disappeared from history. A king whose surviving words recorded the collapse of the political world around him. By the beginning of the first millennium BC, the balance of power had changed. An Egyptian account known as the Journey of Wenamun describes an official sent to Byblos to obtain cedar for the sacred ship of the god Amun. But King Zakar-Baal did not treat him as the representative of a commanding empire. He kept Wenamun waiting and refused to release the timber without payment.
Your pharaohs sent silver and valuable goods for our cedar. I am not Egypt's servant. Bring payment, and you shall have your timber.
Egypt could no longer expect obedience without payment. It remained respected, but Byblos was entering a more independent Phoenician age. It was during this period that another king was laid to rest. His name was Ahiram. Very little is known about Ahiram's reign. He is generally placed around 1000 BC, although some scholars argue for a later date. His fame comes from his elaborately carved stone sarcophagus. Today, Ahiram's sarcophagus is displayed at the National Museum of Beirut, where visitors can see its reliefs and famous inscription. On its principal relief, a king sits upon a throne decorated with winged sphinxes as a procession approaches with offerings. Groups of mourning women appear on both shorter sides. The sarcophagus was lowered into Tomb 5 of the royal necropolis, around 10 meters beneath the ground. 2 simpler sarcophagi were discovered in the same chamber, but their occupants remain unidentified. There is no secure evidence that either belonged to Ahiram's son. Ahiram's son and successor commissioned the decorated coffin. His name is damaged in the inscription on the sarcophagus. Older studies reconstructed it as Itobal, while a more recent interpretation reads Pilsibal. Along the lid, he ordered craftsmen to carve a curse.
If any king, governor, or military commander opens it, his authority will be destroyed, his throne overturned, and peace will flee from Byblos.
If any king, governor, or military commander opened the coffin, his authority would be destroyed, his throne overturned, and peace would flee from Byblos. A shorter warning confronted anyone descending the shaft. But the inscription's greatest importance is its writing. Its 38 words form one of the earliest substantial surviving examples of the fully developed Phoenician alphabet. The people of Byblos did not invent writing. Hieroglyphs and cuneiform were thousands of years older, while Canaanite-speaking communities had already experimented with alphabetic writing. By Ahiram's period, a practical alphabet of 22 signs was in use. Each sign represented a consonant, while vowels were supplied by the reader. Compact, adaptable, and easy to reproduce, this writing system could be carved, painted, or written across many different materials. Its users lived in independent city-states such as Gebel, Sidon, and Tyre, and probably identified with their cities or as Canaanites. Phoenician was a Greek name for communities linked by language, traditions, and maritime trade, not one kingdom with a single capital. As their merchants traveled, the alphabet traveled with them. The Greeks adapted its signs and represented vowels more clearly. Their alphabet shaped Etruscan and Latin, eventually influencing many modern European scripts. The Phoenician alphabet also gave rise to Aramaic, which influenced Hebrew, Syriac, and Nabatean, the ancestor of the Arabic alphabet. Byblos was not the birthplace of all writing. It preserved some of the earliest major evidence for the mature Phoenician alphabet and its spread. Ahiram's tomb preserved more than the memory of a king. It preserved a writing system whose descendants remain in use across much of the world. Ahiram was not the last king of Byblos to leave his words in stone. Later rulers, including Yehimilk, Abi-Baal, Eli-Baal, and Shaphat-Baal, recorded dedications to the city's gods. Eli-Baal reused a statue of Pharaoh Osorkon I and dedicated it to Baalat Gebal. Centuries later, the Persian period king Yehimilk recorded his restoration of her sanctuaries and altars. Dynasties and empires changed, but the city's rulers continued to honor the same protective goddess. Byblos paid tribute to the Assyrians, passed under Babylonian and Persian control, and entered the Hellenistic world after Alexander the Great. The city was also closely connected with the myth of Adonis and Astarte. Adonis, from the Semitic Adon, meaning Lord, was associated with beauty, death, and seasonal renewal. Astarte, goddess of love and fertility, was later identified with Aphrodite. In ancient times, the river flowing from Afka toward the Mediterranean near Byblos was known as the Adonis River. Reddish sediment, carried by seasonal rains, was interpreted as the blood of Adonis. Annual ceremonies mourned his death and celebrated renewed life, connecting the coastal city with the rivers, forests, and sanctuaries of the mountains. Centuries later, as Christianity spread, the Adonis River name was changed to Nahar Ibrahim, the River of Abraham, after Saint Abraham of Cyrus, traditionally remembered as a disciple of Saint Maroon, who preached in the valley and helped convert its inhabitants.
The God who made these mountains and this river calls every soul to faith, mercy, and love.
Tyre and Sidon eventually surpassed Byblos in importance, but the city continued to live. Under Roman rule, Byblos was transformed again with new streets, columns, baths, and public buildings. Granite imported from Egypt appeared throughout the city. Along the Roman road stood a nymphaeum, a monumental public fountain with columns, flowing water, and niches for statues. One of its niches held a marble statue of Hygeia, the goddess of health. Today, the statue is displayed in the National Museum of Beirut. The fountain supplied water while displaying the wealth and engineering of Roman Byblos. Around 218 AD, a theater was constructed near the older sacred area. This was a theater, not an amphitheater. Its semicircular seating faced a stage used for public performances. Only part survives. During 20th-century excavations, the remaining stones were dismantled and reassembled near the sea, allowing archaeologists to investigate the much older religious layers beneath the theater's original site. Christianity later spread through the Roman world. Byblos became a bishopric, and Byzantine churches joined its changing landscape. After the Arab conquests of the 7th century, the city passed into a succession of Islamic states. Its rulers, religions, and languages changed, but settlement continued. In 1104, Crusaders captured the city they called Gibelet. They built the castle that dominates the archaeological site today.
Set the Roman columns inside the wall.
They will strengthen the fortress.
It became the stronghold of the Genoese Embriaco family, the Crusader lords of the city, with a central keep, corner towers, and a defensive moat. Its builders reused material from earlier structures. Local limestone and ancient masonry were incorporated into the fortress, while sections of Roman granite columns were placed horizontally across its double-shelled walls, tying the inner and outer faces together. Some of the columns first had to be divided into manageable lengths. This may have been done using rope, water, and abrasive mineral grit. Some of these pieces may already have been reused before they reached the castle, making their original source difficult to identify. In Byblos, one civilization was literally constructed from the remains of another. The fortress was captured by Saladin, later recovered and rebuilt by the Crusaders, and taken by the Mamluks in the 13th century. Around it, medieval Byblos grew within its defensive walls. Under Ottoman rule, its churches, mosque, harbor, houses, and souks formed much of the old town still visible today. At the beginning of the 20th century, much of ancient Byblos remained buried beneath later buildings and accumulated soil. Systematic excavation began in 1921 under the French Egyptologist Pierre Montet. In February 1922, heavy rain triggered a landslide in the coastal cliff, exposing the first of the royal tombs. The discovery led to a wider investigation, and in 1923, Montet's team uncovered Ahiram's sarcophagus inside Tomb 5. From 1925, Maurice Dunon worked at Byblos for decades, revealing Neolithic houses, Bronze Age temples, fortifications, Roman buildings, and thousands of objects. But uncovering the ancient city also transformed it. Later structures were removed, and monuments such as the Roman theater were relocated or reconstructed to expose older remains. The site seen today is therefore both an ancient city and a modern archaeological landscape, shaped by decisions about which layers to uncover and which to preserve. Even in the 20th century, Byblos remained part of a strategically important coastal route. During the Second World War, the Australian Railway Construction and Maintenance Group built the railway between Beirut and Tripoli, including a major bridge at Byblos. On December 19, 1942, a test train traveled along the new line near the city, one day before its official opening. Thousands of years after cedar and papyrus passed through its harbor, Byblos was again connected to a wider transport network. Today, the kings are gone, and the ancient harbor is quiet. But Byblos is not an abandoned city. In 1984, UNESCO inscribed Byblos on the World Heritage List, recognizing its exceptional record of continuous settlement, its importance to Phoenician civilization, and its connection with the spread of the alphabet. People still live beside its walls, walk through its souks, and gather along the coastline that attracted its first settlers. Byblos survived not because it remained unchanged, but because every generation adapted it to a new world. From Neolithic families and Phoenician kings to Roman builders, Crusaders, archaeologists, and railway engineers, each age added another layer to the city. In Byblos, no new era completely erased the one that came before it. History was built, layer upon layer, into the city that remains today.